Good. Mithril. Mithril. Good morning. This is B&E on D&D, and this is my lovely wife, Brittany, and I'm Eric. And so today we're going to do like part 2 on powers. What are the powers that player characters have that make this game so enjoyable? So last time on part 1 we talked about races and a little bit about what they do.
Hello, Jedi.
Here's Jedi. I don't know if you could see his head or not.
We're going to be losing him in the next few months from bone cancer.
Yeah. So we're doing our best to... So as you can tell, sometimes the dogs love to help.
Awful.
So usually it's Hawk, but this time it's the...
Oh, here she comes.
Okay, Hawk. Okay, so here's Hawk.
So we're going to get into the powers, which in this game is really partially controlled by your class. Which I guess you could almost think of as partly as your job.
Yeah,
That's how I was thinking about it. That's probably not at all accurate. It's how I thought of it. So that's like barbarian, wizards, fighters, that kind of thing. So we were gonna start alphabetically.
Alphabetically.
So that's how
the way to go.
it's done listed in the books. So barbarian. This is the only one that makes my skin crawl because the description is that it's from a primitive background and it just makes me want to bite something. But anyway, the idea is that you're not about the book learning, you're about your strength, your internal strength, and...
Carnage.
Fighting, yeah. And there's also some points where you can actually take like berserker skills or feats, I think, where you just basically have a bloodlust.
Yeah.
Bloodlust. That's what I'm trying to think. But it basically all about strength and rages. So with rages, you can do more damage, maybe take more damage, and survive.
In second edition,
No squeaky toys. No squeaky toys during the video.
oh, and would you mind checking to see if we're still in camera?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Back!
Okay, so...
Any more you want to say about barbarians?
Well, barbarian. Well, in the sense that in second edition, our Mithril wants squeak toys. So good boy, Mithril. So in second edition, there was something known as splat books, because you just did have the basic classes, but then there were all sorts of ideas popping up about how to make things a bit more spicy or interesting. So there was actually the Berserker class, and I think that's what slowly evolved into the 5th edition Barbarian. So
Next one is Bard, which is very much what it sounds like. Your main thing is about your charisma. And the idea is that it's a magic user who can inspire others. This can be by making jokes, this can be by song, this can be telling stories, that kind of thing. A Bard is a little bit of a jack of all trades, a little bit.
yeah, they're really great as an enhancement to the party. If you
They can give bonuses.
They can give
so they can
bonuses.
help players in other classes do things a little bit better. Like they can help you maybe sneak a little bit better, or maybe
shake off bad spells.
shake off spells, or yeah. So, but yeah, they are a magic user who can inspire others, which is the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can do other stuff. They can be a very powerful class. They can be overlooked. I'm wearing a Critical Role, not Spawns, t-shirt, and they had one of their last season's characters was a bard who was an extremely powerful character. So don't let bard scare you away from thinking you can't do anything.
Yes. So next is cleric.
This is cleric. Wisdom. You're all about your wisdom. You get magic from gods that you have devoted your service to. So, and I think God can be God. It can be not necessarily just deities in the world, but it can also be maybe an extraplanar entity that wields godlike powers.
Yeah, if the book lists various deities,
There's tons.
of deities, but yeah, if something just doesn't suit right and you want something else, you could work with your dungeon master to create a deity. So like in Critical Role, like in the current season,
We think.
the Traveler is totally inspired by working between Matt Mercer, the dungeon master, and Laura Bailey, who's playing Jester.
But that's just what we think.
But that's what we think, because we don't have all the splat books out there. Oh, and
There sure wouldn't be a splat book about Critical Role.
well,
Yeah, that's what clerics are. They are frequently considered the healer bot. Not necessarily. They don't have to be. They also can wield pretty heavy-duty armor as well, so that's kind of nice. Next is druid. Druid is all about the magic of nature, and they can do animal shapes or forms. Again, can be extremely powerful. But again, their main stat, their main power is wisdom.
So the main thing about druid is that in the early game they may seem as not as powerful. But
I mean, let's be honest. In the beginning, no one's got very much power, but a fighter probably has the most.
Yeah.
Starting off, I mean, you can just still poke this pointy end of the sword into somebody else, and you're fine.
Okay.
And then, in fact, the next one is fighter. So they are quite literally all about the fighting. Their main stat is strength, if you want to just do it by brute force, or dexterity. So it can be a fighter who maybe uses more of an arrow, bow, or a ranged weapon.
Yeah, finesse. Maybe they're not about brute, but they're about finesse.
So strength is literally strength, you know, how strong you are. Dexterity is like your agility, your reflexes, that kind of thing. Next one is monk. Speaking of dexterity, their main one is dexterity and wisdom. And they are the power of their body while seeking physical and spiritual perfection. Now, when I think of monk, I generally think of unarmed combat. That's not the case. So don't do that. Don't fall into that trap. They can use weapons. But that is all. They want the perfect body, the perfect spiritual. They want their epiphany. They want to meet. So that's their thing. But again, can be a very powerful fighter.
The next thing is paladin, and the paladin is like a holy fighter.
Yes.
Combine cleric with fighter. And
They are literally a warrior dedicated to a god or a god-like entity, and they have an oath to that. So the stereotype can be that they are lawful stupid. That is definitely not the case. Lawful stupid is that you suppose you're following the letter of the law without thinking about anything. Although some people's idea of lawful is not mine. But
lawful.
yeah, they're lawful should be following literally the text of a law.
Yeah, or how I also take lawful is that it means you have a strong sense of inner discipline. You're a disciplined individual.
I would disagree with that.
Well, yeah, but
anyway, yes. So that's paladin. They are sort of your knight in shiny armor.
yeah.
Next one is ranger, who is a fighter with an animal companion, and they use nature magic. So they're a little bit like a druid, but also a little bit like a fighter. Animal companions, unfortunately, are frequently treated as meat shields, which makes me feel ill because I feel like if you have a strong connection to an animal
Yeah.
companion, you can speak to them, they speak to you, they can do messages, they can protect you, they can fight for you. It doesn't really make sense that you just go, hey, good buddy I've known for like, 10 years, you just take that arrow for me, okay? Yeah, no. So, but anyway, that's their thing. Again, can be very, very strong. And they're all about dexterity and wisdom.
Yeah, they're kind of like a fighter druid. Because druid is like cleric and druid. Cleric is divine god magic, and druid is nature
Nature magic.
So, like a paladin who's like a fighter cleric, ranger is like a fighter druid because they're about nature. You could have some ideas about a ranger being urban. There's a lot of that.
Yes.
Like instead of hunting predators in the wild, they're hunting like criminals in the city. So
Or monsters that tend to live in maybe the sewers.
Yeah, things like that.
Jedi wants to go outside.
Okay.
Next is rogue thief. But more than a thief, though. Thief is just something how I think of it, but it's definitely not necessarily stealing things. They're all about stealth. They're about tricks. They generally unlock locked things.
Find traps.
Yeah, find traps. They're all about dexterity, but they can also be about intelligence.
They've really shaken up the rogue since second edition, because in second edition, that was it. You were a thief. You were evil. You were selfish. All that stuff.
And that is what evil actually means. All evil means, it literally, is you are self-absorbed. It's not that you want to go out and cause pain. Evil is that you are self-centered.
And then in 5th edition, they definitely have broken that. So rogue just means you're of those skill sets, but you could have an idea, concept of you're like maybe a scout or a bounty hunter or something else along those lines.
Then there's sorcerer, which is very interesting because instead of getting magic from nature or from a deity or some sort of exterior source, sorcerers actually have their magic inside. So it's inherent magic from their blood or some sort of gift. And their main thing is charisma.
Yeah.
Which is unusual because frequently magic has to do with intelligence. But no, theirs all about charisma. Then there's warlock, who are also charisma based, and they have magic from a bargain with an extraplanar entity, which makes to me warlock and cleric a little wishy-washy to me. They feel a little like they could be, or even paladin.
Yeah.
To me, those three seem a little like they could be
they're
murky. But that's just me.
Yeah, they're spell light. I mean, they do cast spells, but it's like, one or two spells kind of a thing. They don't really advance much in spells. They got Eldritch Blast, which they could,
Eldritch just means really old and creepy.
Old and creepy.
Basically.
Yeah, so the main thing that I found interesting about the Warlock was, going back to 2nd edition, there was a splat book. And it was a kit. And then one of the things you could be is the Witch. And the Witch was a wizard who made a compact with an entity, and that's how you got your spell capabilities. So I think that's my impression, was that Warlock is kind of an evolution of that idea. And instead of calling it Witch, it's now Warlock. But you have a patron, and that's how you get your abilities.
Yeah. Finally, we've got the good old-fashioned wizard, completely based on intelligence. They are a magic user that is based on research, hence the intelligence.
Yeah, they actually have a spell book. They have to reread it every night to get their spells for the next day.
They don't reread the whole book. They reread the spells they want to memorize for use for the next day.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get some of the magic user techniques mixed. Because I unfortunately had a wizard and a sorcerer in my party early times, and now I'm totally muddled. But yes.
Yeah. So I have a question. I think I know the answer.
No. Oh, are you asking me or them?
I'm asking you.
Oh, okay.
So what's your favorite class to play?
Fighter.
Yep.
I like sticking pointy things into other people and then getting the loot.
Yeah, so when I run a game,
He keeps wanting me to be like a hero,
yeah.
and
oh,
I'm
no.
like, can I get paid?
Yeah, she's all about the loot, the money, and
But I hate going shopping.
but yeah, so it's like, all
I
right.
hate leveling up, and I hate shopping.
Yeah, after reminder poke
Lots
that
of pokes.
You got like a lot of money here.
So basically, I just want to take out my sheer inner aggression.
Yeah, well, it makes it really easy to be a dungeon master in the sense that all I got to do is
But
throw.
it took a while.
It took a while.
Took, what, 2 years? It took
At
about 2
least, yeah.
years to figure out I didn't want to be a hero. I didn't want to schmooze with the populace. I didn't want the populace coming up to me and fawning over me. I'd be just sort of like literally backing up in my chair away from the table. Like,
Yeah, ooh, do I have to talk to these people?
I don't want to talk to anybody. I've got some social anxiety, and it actually, I can't get past it even in my imagination.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, just point me at a dangerous thing, and I'll try to just whack at it. It's my main. Yeah, that's how I do in video games too. Just
Yeah.
everyone mass and whack on things. Yeah.
So,
And what's your favorite classes if I don't know?
Wizard.
What a surprise! He will spend hours reorganizing his spellbook, and he actually does write it all out in little booklets. Organizing, picking what spells he's going to want to use. Hours and hours organizing his loot, organizing the stuff, thinking about his character backgrounds, and I'm just
Yeah, I will.
I don't pick it up until the next time we play, and I go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I forgot to level up.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because that's the other thing about the game is, you level up and you get either stronger, more effective stuff that you already have.
You get
spell
better.
cards.
You
Or,
get better.
get better. Or more spells of a higher level.
It should be like the most fun, exciting part of
Uh-huh.
the game, and I hate it.
Yeah, but for me, that's
That and pouring over your tomes.
yeah, that's like
Loves it.
getting a nice coffee with actual whipping cream on top. Yeah, that's it for me. In fact, it's funny because after we're done with a session, sometimes Brainy will say like, "I didn't level up, did I?" And then with me, I'm like, "Did I level up? Did I level up?"
I announce it that when we get to a point, we don't do experience. There's different ways of leveling up. There's experience based, which means that every time you do something, the dungeon master is keeping track, and you level up when you get to a certain number of points, and it changes for the levels because obviously it's easier to get to level 2 than it is to get to level from 19 to 20 because they want you up to the point where a rat can't kill you in one bite. But they don't want you to be able to destroy Tiamat, 5-headed dragon, in one hit. Right. So, but I always announce it at the end of the session if he's leveled up, and he doesn't, and I sort of wait for a few seconds. Do I have to level up?
Yeah, it feels like bad news because I'm like,
And I always do it wrong too.
yeah. So I have to review her character sheets.
And
to
I
make
don't
sure
do it
it's-
where I'm giving myself an advantage. I always
Oh.
end up nerfing myself.
Yeah, I mean sometimes I'll catch like, hey, did you know your
You should be
bonus to attack is actually much higher than a 2?
No.
It's like it should be like +5 and not
And it's
+2.
not like I'm not reading it over.
Yeah, I know.
But this has been a problem since my chronic migraines.
Yeah.
So it's my brain. It don't work no more.
The other difference, which can be tricky, of course, is that we're just playing 1-on-1. So
And I'm leveling at 4 people.
4 people. So it's much easier if you have your one character that you're controlling. Much easier to manage. And yeah, if you've got multiple, then yeah, it's tricky to keep
I mean,
them
I
all
can see
straight.
how it could be really fun
Yeah.
to enjoy leveling up 4 different characters, controlling 4 different lines, or however many lines of life and experiences and techniques. But for me, it's a bit too much. It's a bit too much. But it's easier to run a game. We could make it so it was a single player.
But oh, that's a lot of work. We've done it.
Yeah, it ended up he was either running several DMPCs, which is Dungeon Master or Game Master run characters,
Yeah,
or I'd be running them, which was kind of the same as having
yeah.
my own characters.
But I think we did one module where it was just your one character, but we did it where you had a split class.
Oh, and we were doing psionics without an
Psionics.
actual viable psionics system. So we were like cobbling together dual classing, which was not being listed anywhere really. And we were also trying to do psionics sort of on the fly. I did not understand a lot about the psionics, the way that they were explaining it, and I kept thinking like if I had to roll to hit.
Yeah.
And he kept wondering why I kept rolling.
Yeah.
And
Like,
I
it
thought
just works.
I had to roll like a 20 to hit, and I think actually a 20 would have been like a crit, so it would have been doing more damage. So I thought I was just
Yeah.
lame. I couldn't do anything, but I could have. I just wasn't playing it right.
And I love the psionicist.
Oh, psionics is
That's
all about mental magic.
Mental magic.
It's not considered magic.
It's like a sorcerer where it's internal, but you're using the power of your mind. Think Star Trek, Spock.
It's more of a telepathy, telekinesis, those things.
And the thing about psionics is that back at second edition, that's where it started. No, actually no. I think before that there was you got to roll a percentile dice on the first edition, and you rolled percentile dice to see if you had latent psionic power. But I don't think there was an actual psionic class until second edition. There was a splat book on it because it was purely optional.
I don't even know if it's covered by 5th edition.
Yeah, I don't know either because it was the
We haven't
psionics.
bought new goodies
Yeah,
for years.
yeah.
So.
In 3.0, there was psionics became an official class.
There was a splat book.
But as a splat book. But the thing about psionics is because for a lot of people, they see it as a science fiction element, not fantasy. So it's like having a fly in your soup for a lot of people. It irks them, it rubs them the wrong way. But I always feel if you're imaginative enough, you can make the flavor feel different.
I mean, well, let's be honest. We don't know how a fantasy world should work because, by very definition, it's one that does not exist. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could make up your own rules.
Yeah. So I think like,
And you can't decide it's medieval times because it isn't. And they had a lot more. They had guns. They had.
yeah.
Yeah. So that argument never makes sense to me.
No.
But that's one thing that's really great about this game is you can have it be exactly the way you want. You can create a world and say, okay, we don't have this, we do have this. We don't have that, we do have this. Or like Eric, we do a lot of house rules. We do a lot of house rules.
We love house rules.
And a lot of the reason we do house rules is because we both suck at rolling.
One of the things that I love about when I would play the psionic class is that there's no material components.
We don't do. We're really bad.
Yeah.
We don't do material. Material components are big. So that's like wizards for sure use them. I think bards.
Bards use them.
Bards use so material or like that whole stereotype like Eye of Newt, chicken teeth, whatever. But so it's like pearls or diamond dust or charcoal or feathers or
Rubies.
ruby.
A lot of gems.
Lots of stuff. So it ranges from super super expensive to just crap you can find
Right.
looking around. But those are material components because you're actually using those materials
Yeah.
to craft your spell. We don't use them because Eric found it very quickly that since I don't like to shop and I don't like to level up, neither do I like to keep track of an extensive inventory of material components.
Yeah. A wizard over time has like a Batman style utility belt, and maybe a
Well, I don't know about Batman stuff, but
Well,
in his head, that's what
in my head. So you got little vials and things all over your wizard's person
or
that
in
you're,
their pack.
you're tossing out, flipping
And,
out,
I mean,
manipulating.
one thing you can do if you feel that not having any material components isn't fair, you could have like a deduction. Say you give up a certain amount of coinage per period of time that says you've gone shopping for your material components.
Yeah.
But we started with that after Eric realized I didn't want to look for
Yeah.
charcoal or pearls or anything else. I literally just wanted to go and kill something.
Yeah.
So we started with that, and then eventually we just gave up on that as well because
Yeah.
he found out I wasn't even really spending my money. I just
Yeah.
like having it. And I think that's because we don't have much in real life, so I just like the idea of hoarding money.
Yes.
And not spending it, and just a comfortable little nest egg for when my characters grow decrepit and they can live in luxury.
Okay, so I think the other thing that I'm gonna attempt to do is I started creating a necromancer or a death cleric / necromancer,
And you did it as a drow, didn't you?
and I did it as a drow.
I was shocked. I thought he was totally gonna roll up a dwarf.
Yeah,
Totally thought he was gonna roll up a dwarf.
I know. Well, I was thinking, it's been a long time since I've played a drow. In the various modules that we've played, the drow wasn't supported because we were doing Pathfinder.
Well, technically the word drow is copyrighted
Right.
by Forgotten Realms.
Wizards of the Coast.
By Wizards of the Coast. I don't know what I'm talking about. But copyrighted by Summit.
Right.
So, sometimes they're called dark elves. Sometimes they're called other things. The idea is they are dark-skinned, generally, with white hair, generally, that live underground. And are generally evil,
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah.
I always thought it was fascinating that they were dark-skinned but lived underground, because to me they should have been, like,
Yeah.
melanin deficient.
Yeah.
And, like, super, super pale, because, like, no sun. But anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's a matriarchal society.
Now, isn't it interesting that the
yeah.
only matriarchal society is evil?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Actually, I thought of two things that were interesting. One is that they're evil, and then they happen to be dark-skinned, and they also happen to be matriarchal. I'm like, wow, interesting.
Yeah, these are the things they thought of as being bad.
Yes, but
Or maybe they were just trying to go different.
maybe
I
they're
could be
just trying to
reading
go
into
different.
it. I
But-
probably am.
Anyway, how I think of it is they worship this demon entity known as Lolth, which is also copyrighted. And Spider. It's
She's
this.
awesome.
She's about the web mistress. She's the
all about plots.
plots
and setting
and
people against other people.
backstabbing.
And, she just enjoys the carnage and
Yes.
is unapologetic about it.
Yeah, and so they're all about power through machinations and Machiavellian things on a very lethal level. And so that these houses in cities, and each house is ruled by a matriarch.
And there's only a handful of houses.
And yeah, there's only a handful of houses because there's so,
And the
so much
matriarch does a lot of
backstabbing.
breeding,
Yeah,
which doesn't sound comfy.
yeah.
And they're really long-lived. Elves.
They're really long-lived,
So
yeah.
I mean, you're looking at hundreds of years of fairly constant pregnancies. Seems.
Yeah, so basically,
Horrific.
one of the few things men could do is either be a fighter or a wizard. And if they can't do either, they're stuck as a slave or just slain because
Right.
they're useless.
Right.
So
Sort of like Exposed, except I don't know if they go to the effort of exposing them. I think they just kill them.
yeah, so I think
Now, how do you think they're Machiavellian?
because they have plots within plots,
That's
and
not how I think of Machiavellian.
yeah, I actually read The Prince, I think,
that may
and
be fuzzy.
it's been years, over a decade since I read The Prince. I don't remember the particulars, but it was a very like how you're seen is more important than what you do, and you should do bloodthirsty things, as long as you're perceived as magnanimous or whatnot. Oh no, it's
Or is
it's
it ruled
greater.
by
It's
fear?
yeah, it's greater to be feared than loved, because fear inspires people to actually do things, and if you do nice things, they forget about it. But if you do something that's real mean, oh, they'll remember that.
Right.
So it's yeah.
So that does fit.
So that does fit. Yeah.
As I said,
So,
it's been a while since I've read
yeah.
about it.
I didn't think I'd come up with.
I don't
today.
think we ever described what in Blaze's wisdom was. Wisdom, other than you can look up what wisdom means, it's perception and insight. And charisma is all about your personality, which can include intimidation. It's not necessarily you're just happy and good. Let's see, everything, constitution, I don't think we brought up, but that's like endurance, how much hit points you have, so how much life, so you can get
Right.
hit and you're still up for longer. And yeah, I mean, intelligence is intelligence and reasoning and memory. Strength is physical strength. I think we've gone through all of them.
Yeah. So.
Oh, scores. I like to go over scores. So basically, the score rating is generally 1 through 20.
What are you trying?
So 1 to 5 is you are completely inept. Actually, you're not even inept. You're incapable. So like, if
Yeah.
your intelligence is 1 to 5, you can't talk, you can't reason, none of it.
Can't read and write.
Can't read and write. Now, if you're 6 to 7, you're kind of inept. Can't really do it well. And then once you're reaching about 10 to 11, you are normal. So you do it averagely. 12 to 13, you're very capable at something. 15 to 16 is you are gifted. You have a wonderful talent. You know this stuff. You are doing it well. And then 20 is just epic. I mean, it's beyond Olympic level. You're so good at something. It's legendary. It's mythic. It's amazing that anyone could ever be that good. So, for example, like I probably have a 7 or 8 strength, kind of weak. I probably have about a 10 dex, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower. My constitution's a bit low. Intelligence is used to be a little bit higher. Wisdom, and charisma. But my lowest stat would definitely be strength, because I am weak as F. So,
Wow. Yeah, I used to do my stats. All I remember was it felt like in second edition anyway, that like for intelligence specifically, that if you tacked on a 0 at the end of the rating, that was the IQ. So a 7 would be a 70. So that would be, that IQ. And then so for me, I was like, oh, that means I'm 13.
I remember when I took an IQ score.
Yeah, so because my IQ is somewhere around like 135, something like that, 136.
I know my dad is Mensa levels, because he's at
Yeah.
Mensa, part of Mensa. So that's like, what, 180?
Yeah.
Something like that. But I'm not that high.
Yeah, so.
I'm definitely not that high now, let me tell you.
Okay, so I would say, that kind of feels about right for.
So hopefully it covers some of the powers. Obviously, there's more with feats, so things you can take that you are focusing on and excelling at. Specific spells can be considered powers, but that's, I think,
Yeah.
a little bit more, hopefully, the helpful overview. If you want to create a character sheet, you do not necessarily have to buy them from Wizards of the Coast. You can go to their website, Takes a little bit of looking around, but you can download their character sheets for free and print them out. They actually have ones you can type in, editable PDFs.
Yeah.
So if you have as lousy handwriting as a certain someone, you can do that.
All right. So yeah. So hopefully I'm able to splice together my series of character creations, and I'll probably just split it into probably a half. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Please don't forget to subscribe. Click like and share would be great. And yeah, we love to hear your comments. Please be polite. And if you have any questions or topic ideas, let us know. We'd love to hear it and work off that.
Yeah,
Thank you
if
very much.
we've been really vague on something that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Listen. Happy gaming.
Happy gaming. Okay, so this part is about character creation. So the things and items that I needed was definitely making sure I had coffee ready. The books that I used were the Dungeon Master's Guide, only because the cleric domain that I wanted to pick was Death Cleric, which is not considered a good aligned class domain. So it was an optional rule, so I picked that. Otherwise, all the other domains are in the other books. So the other books are the Player's Handbook. We happen to have Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and then Sword Coast Adventure Guide. They all contain. The Player's Handbook was the lion's share of stuff that you need, of course, to create a character. But the other books had a little bit of flavor here and there that I was happy to choose from to finesse my character idea. So one of the things that I kind of start off with is looking at the minis that we have. So here's one mini, and I really liked this one because of the concept that I had was the Drow cleric who worshipped Merkel in the Forgotten Realms setting, which is the god of death and the undead, and also multi-classing into the wizard class that would specialize in necromancy at 2nd level. So I love the back, and the back has a bunch of skulls on it. So I thought, this would be a perfect mini. So I like to base things on minis that we have, just because it looks a little bit cooler. And then the other thing that I needed were to roll the attributes using a 6-sided die. I have a bunch of 6-siders, but these are my favorite. I refer to them as chaos die because when you roll a 1, it's this symbol, which is the signs of chaos. I came across them when I was a lot younger, and then I lost them during several moves, but my wife was able to help me find these again. And it kind of reminds me of Elric of Melniboné and his love of chaos, and I thought that was kind of neat. So the rolling method that we use is for attributes rolling 4d6 and drop the lowest, and we house rule where we get to re-roll ones after that. So the other thing that I like to use is my dice tray when rolling dice. This is actually handmade. I did that a few years ago. And next is you're gonna want paper to sketch things, write things down, and have ideas going on before you actually use the character sheet, which is I like it to look neat. So when I've kind of finalized things, then I write it down here on the character sheet. So of course the other thing that you're going to need is a pencil and eraser, because even when you think you got it right, there's other inspirations, so you switch things around, and so you erase sometimes and did it. So I'm gonna reposition the camera so I can sit down while I look at the character sheet with you. Okay, so what I did is I rolled a couple of times. So the main attributes are strength, dex, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and I rolled a series of 6 dice rolls 2 times. So the first time I rolled down, I got a low of 9 and a high of 18, and the rest of the scores were right at the average to slightly above average rating. I rolled again, and I got a bunch of the highest of 17, but a bunch of really above average stats. And if I was maybe min-maxing, which is a term that's referred to picking the best stuff and minimizing the negative aspects of things. I might have chosen this one because it's essentially a very good spread of rolls. But I chose this one because a couple things. One is I kind of foresaw him as a kind of a genius kind of a thing. So I wanted that 18 to put in intelligence. And then I kind of saw him as not really physically fit and a bit sickly. So I thought the 9 was perfect for constitution. So his health points will definitely suffer because it's at a score where I get a penalty. So that would apply to my hit points as I gain in levels. I wouldn't gain as much as having a higher score. And then, so the other thing that was part of the attribute choice was because I picked the Drow as the subrace of Elf. They get a +1 to charisma, so I was able to change a 12 to a 13. And then because I'm an elf, I rolled a 12, but you'll see on my character sheet I was able to change that to a 14 because of that. And the other thing that I need to keep in mind is because I'm starting this character at a total of 4th level, but I'm multi-classing. Part of the multi-class rules is that your current class and new class has to have an attribute prerequisite. So for cleric it was wisdom, wizard was intelligence. So I had to make sure that both of those were at least a 13. So I was able to do so. So I was able to keep within concept. And then as far as hit points go, my first level was in cleric. So it was a D8 hit dice. And then for the wizard, since I'm 3 levels of that, 3d6. And that was my total hit points. And then we house rule that we maximize that just because my wife and I can get dead really quickly. We just have really rotten luck sometimes. So we maximize hit points, and which is really nice because as you can see, the grand total hit points that I have is 22. So I'm the equivalent of 4th level with just 22 hit points. That's just a few hits from an axe and I'm dead. So this character is excessively what we call squishy, which means they're quick to die. So this character isn't necessarily going to be in the front lines during a melee confrontation. And so let's see, what I chose for the attributes are going to go along here on the character sheet, and right below them in the circles you get a bonus, either no bonus, a bonus, or a penalty depending upon the rating. So my strength was 11, so it has nothing. And all of the positive ones have a bonus, and then my constitution was 9, so it has a penalty of 1. And then you can work out based on your classes, your saving throw specialty, and those you circle in because the ones that you specialize in based on your class, you get to add your proficiency bonus, and the first few levels of your class, it's just a +2. So like intelligence, my rating bonus is a +4, so I add the +2 proficiency bonus, so it's a total of 6. So if I have to do a saving throw for intelligence, I roll a 20-sided die, and then I get to add a +6. The higher the better. And then for skills, that's based off your, it can be based off race sometimes, but it's usually your class and your background. So the filled in circles, those are skills that I chose. And because I don't like to overlap things and whatnot and be efficient with skills, I look at all the both classes and the background, which determine skills to make sure I really have a spread out bunch of those. So I picked Arcana, History, Insight, Medicine, Perception, Persuasion, and Religion. My character is really devout of his god Merkel, so that's one reason why I chose Religion. Persuasion I chose because he does worship Merkel and is in necromancy. People may have, and a drow, people may have an immediate negative reaction to him based on that. So he may have to be a bit more persuasive to counteract that and have a more of a positive influence on any kind of social interaction. And then Arcana I like because for any wizard I get, I tend to want them to be familiar with their class. Arcana gives you information about identifying spells as they're being cast, research, magic items, those kinds of things. So the other thing is class and background sometimes allows you to get items. So right here under equipment, that's where I listed all the items that I got, and I was able to pick leather armor. So because I have leather armor, I'm able to have an armor class rating of 13. Because of my dexterity, I have a +2 initiative, and with my race being drow, I have a speed of 30. And so the weapons that I chose got to go here. So I have rapier, quarterstaff, and a hand crossbow. And let's see, for my passive wisdom perception, it's a 10 plus your modifiers. So I have a 13 in that. And what's nice about the Drow is I get a bunch of flavor and stuff abilities. Like for dark vision, it's really superior. It's 120 feet. But the counterbalance to that is I have sunlight sensitivity. So anything that happens that's sight based, such as attack rolls and perception that's in direct sunlight, I get a disadvantage. What disadvantage means is I roll a 20-sider twice and I take the lowest of the roll. And I also get Drow magic. I can cast Dancing Lights, and since I'm 4th level total, I can now cast the 3rd level Fairy Fire, and I can cast those once per long rest. Because I'm an elf, I have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magical sleep won't affect my character. Because I'm a wizard, I have arcane recovery. So after a short rest, I'm able to get some spell slots back, so I can recast spells. And a short rest is just about 30 minutes. So in 2nd edition rules, once you cast all your spells, you were that was your one trick. And then a wizard or cleric, once they're done with their spells, they're kind of useless, because that's their thing. So in 5th edition, it's kind of neat that you're just after 30 minutes, you're able to have a little bit of a oomph come back to your main trick for your class. Because I'm when I reach 2nd level as a wizard, you could pick your arcane tradition. So there are things like evocation, abjuration, illusion, and I chose necromancy. There's a ton of traditions, but that's what I wanted to be, is necromancy. I like the idea of eventually animating dead. And then let's see. When I choose my tradition, research time to copy necromancy spells into my spell book is half. I have Grim Harvest. Once per turn after killing creatures with a 1st level spell or higher, I get some hit points back. And then because I'm 4th level total, I was able to choose a feat. And in one of the Splat books, there was the option of taking a race feat. And I think that was in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So there's actually in there a Drow feat that I could pick. So I picked it. And it's high magic. I can detect magic at will, levitate, and dispel magic. Use either one of those once per long rest. And that rounded out my character in terms of traits and features. And then the hermit background kind of entails personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. This is optional, like anything in the books, but I like this because it adds a little bit of flavor. I like to have characters that have a lot of rich history and whatnot. So for the Life of Seclusion, I was in a communal religious order. And then the other thing is that you can roll for these randomly, but I like to really have a concept in mind, and so I just picked the one that fits best the concept. So for personality traits, I picked I am utterly serene, even in the face of disaster. For ideals, I picked logic. Emotions must not cloud our sense of what is right and true, or our logical thinking. For bonds, I picked I entered seclusion to hide from the ones who might still be hunting me. I must someday confront them. And I picked that because I figured his society where he came from, the Drow, they're into their god Lolth, and there's other sub deities in the Drow culture, and Merkel is not in that culture. It's slightly different, and his views with Merkel being even with the worship of Merkel in the above surface is slightly different. That he might be have occasional hunting packs after him that he may have to fend off. So I thought that was interesting. And then for flaws, I picked now that I've returned to the world, I enjoy its delights a little too much. And I interpret that to being the surface world, because he was in an austere temple, which was a mortuary, and now he's able to enjoy a bit of the high life in society since he's no longer at that place. And next is because he is a spellcaster, cleric, and necromancer. One of the fun things that I like picking and choosing, which is both an extreme delight to me and also torturous because there's only so many I can pick, is spells. So I kind of look through all the books to really look at what's flavor. There's the really, you know, maybe min-maxing is not exactly the right term or not, but there's certain spells that are quite common for a lot of players, and those would be spells like armor, magic missile, shield, things like that. For a cleric, could be cure wounds, and so I picked a couple of those, which I thought I fit my character naturally anyway. But I really wanted to go for things that were flavorful. So they're not necessarily awesome in combat per se, but I figured this guy would need some help interacting with others because he's used to being alone and having to deal with threats on his own. And then also just worshiping a god of the dead and being a necromancer. I tend to focus, if I could, on necromancy or death related type spells. Cantrips are spells that once you pick, you can use them at will. So you don't have to worry about running out of it for the day. You could just keep going as much as you want. The only restriction is that once you're in combat, you can only use one spell usually per turn. So choosing a cantrip versus another spell or using a weapon, it can be a dicey situation because you want to pick something that's effective. For the cleric cantrips, I picked resistance, sacred flame, and thaumaturgy. I liked thaumaturgy because what that kind of does is you could be imposing by increasing the volume of your voice, having things like thunder or mild earthquakes rumble on in the background while you talk. So that could intimidate foes. I picked Toll of the Dead, which is in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. It allows me to affect two targets because of my class skills that I chose to they get affected by the fear of death and whatnot, and so they get damaged based on that. And then there's for the wizard cantrips, I chose Friends, Green Flame Blade, and then Prestidigitation. I like Prestidigitation a lot because it allows my character to do minor effects, such as cleaning the clothes, making the cape billow in a fake wind. Very minor illusions, like I could have my eyes glow, things like that, which I think are a nice flavor thing. And then for first level spells, for my cleric domain, I was able to take Ray of Sickness. So that is a spell that's always prepared. And then for the other cleric spells I chose, I liked Bane and Cure Wounds. And then for wizard, I picked Cause Fear, which is a necromancy spell, Charm Person, False Life, which is necromancy. It gives me an extra hit point boost, and then Magic Missile. And then for second level, I chose Blindness, Deafness for that's necromantic, and then the spell Web. What I like about the spell Web is that the culture of the Drow is that they have this affinity with spiders, and so I just figured this character loves spiders. The meaner, the nastier, the better. And then rounding it out is I chose the name, which is Zen Omrin. I went and Googled a Drow name generator, and so I was able to find one I liked, and the alignment that I chose was lawful neutral. I didn't see him as evil, which is part of what puts him into conflict with his community where he came from. He just sees things as not necessarily good, but just there's a balance to things, and that he believes in a kind of an inner discipline. And what is what is. So he just kind of leaves things alone. He feels that death is a natural part of life, and he's there to make sure that that passing goes well, and that either once dead, he can bring them back as an undead minion serving Merkel, or that they pass on, and he could do a rite to make sure that they go to the land of the dead. So this was my character. It took me yesterday some hours, and then this morning to finish up. It took me probably another hour or two. So it could be a lot quicker if you don't care about a lot of the optional stuff. And the other thing is, if you don't pick a spell caster, that also is a very time-consuming element. So if you're just picking like a fighter and your first level, the character creation is going to go a lot faster than what I have, which is Cleric Wizard, both heavy spellcasting classes, and I'm also effectively level 4. So otherwise, that's it. Any questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer in upcoming YouTube episodes. And so please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And we look forward to answering any questions you might have in comments. And happy gaming.